Hi, my name is Bryce Turner. I am 27 years old, and I've been married to Shelley, my lively and beautiful wife, who is just a year younger than me. We've been together for a little over 5 years, still in the early stages of what I thought was a strong and promising partnership. Like any couple, we've faced our share of challenges, but nothing could have prepared me for the curveball that almost shattered everything. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, engrossed in an article online. It was about the wealth of new data coming from satellites, forcing us to rethink our understanding of the universe. I found it amusing how something we treat as truth can suddenly be replaced when fresh information emerges. It's like experts are only as good as their last theory, destined to be swapped out for new ones as time goes on. While pondering these thoughts, Shelley walked into the living room, looking determined. Her hand rested on her hip, and her expression told me she was about to drop a bomb. "Bryce," she began, her tone firm yet casual, "this Friday, I'm going on a date with one of my coworkers." For a second, I thought I misheard her. Shelley is many things, but predictable isn't one of them. Still, this was so out of left field, I couldn't process it. Her posture screamed defiance, almost daring me to object. She looked ready for an argument, which wasn't unusual. Shelley loves a good debate. She has a knack for persistence and can often outlast me with sheer determination. But this wasn't a topic we'd ever sparred over before. As she continued, her voice softened, though the words stung. "It's not that I don't love you. I absolutely do. This won't affect our relationship, I promise. I need to explore, meet new people, broaden my horizons." She hesitated before adding, "Who knows? Maybe I'll pick up some new tricks we can both enjoy. In the long run, this might even make us stronger." I sat there frozen, a thousand emotions raging inside me. Anger, disbelief, betrayal, all flashing through my mind like a chaotic slideshow. My thoughts raced between violent outbursts I'd never act on and sarcastic comebacks. But none of those would change the situation. And then, as if inspired by a long-forgotten memory, a solution began to form. I remembered reading about Tom Sawyer and his infamous fence painting trick, how he got others to do his work by making it seem appealing. That was it. Perception shapes reality. If I couldn't outright oppose her idea, maybe I could shift how it played out. Plastering on my best grin, I looked at Shelley and said, "Wow, Shell, that's an amazing idea. Friday, huh? I never considered that possibility before. Let's go for it." Her confident demeanor faltered, her brow furrowing as she processed my reaction. Okay," she stammered, clearly taken aback. That's not the response I was expecting. Standing up, I grabbed her hands and looked her straight in the eye, brimming with faux enthusiasm. "No, really. This is fantastic. You've given me such a great idea. There's this woman at the gym who's been dropping hints she's interested in me. I've been brushing her off, but hey, if we're doing this, I might as well let her know we're open to it. Thanks, Shelley, you're the best." Her face turned pale, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came out. I walked to the kitchen, fighting the urge to laugh. Over my shoulder, I called out, "Want anything to drink? I'm grabbing some water." "And no, I'm fine," she replied, her voice shaky. Standing by the calendar on the wall, I made a theatrical show of planning my next move. Let's see, Wednesday's coming up. I'll need to hit the gym early so I can talk to her. Hopefully, she's still into me and hasn't moved on. Oh man, Friday could be a wild night. I better pack some cologne, really make an impression. I could feel Shelley's eyes boring into me. She didn't say a word, but her silence spoke volumes. Her crossed arms and furrowed brow screamed that this wasn't going according to her plan. When I returned to the couch, I pretended to read the article I'd been browsing earlier, though I was far too focused on Shelley's reaction to absorb a single word. She sat there, visibly uncomfortable, her mind likely running through arguments she'd prepared. But how could she voice them without making herself look hypocritical? I let her stew, savoring the shift in power. Eventually, she sighed heavily. "I'm tired," she muttered, getting up. As Shelley turned toward the stairs leading to our bedroom, she paused briefly and glanced back at me. "I love you, Bryce," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of emotion I couldn't ignore. There was sadness and regret in her tone, mixed with something I couldn't quite place. Disappointment, perhaps? I nodded, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. "Good night, Shell," I replied. She smiled faintly, gave me a quick kiss, and disappeared upstairs. Left alone on the couch, I tried to focus on the article I had been reading, but my thoughts were racing. This moment felt pivotal, like a fork in the road with no easy path forward. As I replayed the events of the past couple of weeks in my mind, I began to notice patterns I had previously brushed off. Shelley's behavior had shifted subtly, but it was enough to warrant suspicion. I thought back to the hushed phone calls she had taken recently, always stepping into a quiet corner of the house. When I had asked about them, she claimed they were personal conversations with her sister and that she was entitled to privacy. At the time, I hadn't pressed further, but now it seemed out of place. Typically, Shelley's chats with her sister were casual and open, never secretive. Afterward, she would usually share the highlights with me, laughing about family gossip or silly anecdotes. That openness had disappeared in the past 2 weeks. Then there were the text messages. Lately, I had noticed her smiling at her phone more often, occasionally stifling a giggle. Something about it felt off. It was time to dig deeper. While Shelley was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, I went to the computer and pulled up our cell phone records. Scanning the past 2 weeks, I found 4 calls and 6 text messages from a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't her sister's number. I checked to be sure. A sudden impulse led me to search the unfamiliar number online. The results revealed the name Jason Mazin, along with an address in our town. Curiosity turned into determination. Logging into Shelley's work account was easy. I had helped her with similar tasks in the past. She worked in human resources at Merrill Brothers Engineering and Design, handling employee schedules and leave tracking. Within moments, I confirmed that Jason Mazin was an employee there, having joined the company 7 months ago. A sinking feeling settled in my gut as I pieced it together. Jason was the one calling and texting my wife. He was not her sister, nor was he some innocent acquaintance. If there was any doubt left, it vanished when I logged into Shelley's email. Her password hadn't changed, a small relief. Searching for Jason's name yielded several messages, all from a woman named Darcy Sears. The emails painted a clear picture. Darcy had been nudging Shelley, practically encouraging her to pursue Jason. One message even mentioned Jason's interest in Shelley and his request for her personal information. Darcy called him cute and pushed Shelley to see where it goes. Shelley's replies were hesitant but telling. She insisted she hadn't crossed any lines yet, but it was clear this weekend's date was meant to test those boundaries. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. It was official. Our marriage was teetering on the edge. If Shelley had already crossed the line, there would be no coming back. That night, I busied myself packing my gym bag for the next morning, making sure to rustle around enough for Shelley to hear. My movements were deliberate, calculated, designed to plant a seed of doubt in her mind. What was I up to? I intended to let her wonder. Eventually, I crawled into bed, but sleep didn't come easily. My mind churned with thoughts of what lay ahead. The next morning, Wednesday, I rose early and headed to the gym, humming a cheerful tune under my breath to further fuel Shelley's curiosity. At the gym, I worked out with purpose but avoided unnecessary conversations. Afterward, I went to work, burying myself in tasks to keep my mind off the situation at home. By the time I clocked out, I still hadn't figured out my next move. When I arrived home, Shelley's car was already in the garage. The hood was still warm. She hadn't been back long. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and walked inside. "Hey, baby," I called out cheerfully, heading toward the bedroom to shed my tie and jacket. Over my shoulder, I added, "Shelley, can we talk about this weekend? I think we should set some ground rules." Her voice trembled slightly as she responded, "Yes, I think we should talk. I already ordered Chinese food for dinner." "I hope that's okay." "Sounds great," I replied, sensing her unease. The tension in the air was palpable as we sat down to eat. I broke the silence first. "Since you've had time to think about this weekend's plans, I figured I'd do the same." I sketched out some ideas and even made a flowchart. I chuckled, trying to inject some levity. You know, once a programmer, always a programmer. Shelley's eyes widened in surprise. "A flowchart? she echoed. Exactly. I think it's the best way to make sure we're both on the same page. I don't want this new dynamic to destroy what we have. I watched her reaction carefully. She took a sharp breath, her face betraying a mix of confusion and worry. Okay, she said hesitantly. Let's talk. I just think we should mutually respect that this is our space and no one else's, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. Secondly, no disrespecting each other when with our buddies. That's just cruel and will hurt us in the long run. Third, our shared plans and activities come first. We should never cancel or rearrange our time together for the sake of fitting in with someone else. And no lies or meanness. Those will destroy us faster than anything else. I looked at Shelley, hoping my words were sinking in. These are just a few thoughts I've had. I think we should agree on some boundaries as reasonable adults. How does that sound? Shelley was already seated at the table, but she was struggling to swallow her food. It seemed the reality of the situation was becoming hard for her to digest. Finally, she spoke quietly, her eyes fixed on her plate. I don't know. This is getting so complicated. At that moment, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, raising my eyebrows as if I recognized the number. Hold that thought, I said, standing up. I need to take this call. I'll be right back. I headed into our small office, closing the door behind me. Making sure Shelley couldn't hear me, I set my phone to record and answered the call, speaking in a low, muffled voice. Hello? The caller's voice was thick with an accent from the Indian subcontinent. Hello, Mr. Turner. This is the IRS. We have discovered that you owe us $1,326 in unpaid taxes for 2021. Feigning enthusiasm, I replied, Hi. I'm so glad you called. I'm really excited about Friday night. What time works best for you? The caller, clearly confused, pressed on. What Friday? This is a serious matter. If you don't pay immediately, we will send the police to arrest you. Still pretending, I said, Okay, that works for me. I'll pick you up at your apartment. We can go to a nice restaurant for dinner, and then maybe back to your place for the rest of the evening. What kind of food do you like? This is not a joke, Mr. Turner, the caller insisted. If you do not go out and buy $1,026 worth of gift cards and provide the numbers, the police will come and arrest you. Laughing internally, I kept up the act. Sure, we can skip dinner and just stay in, but I'd really like to treat you to something nice first. Maybe even for the whole weekend, if that's what you want. By now, the caller's frustration was palpable. When the police come, they will teach you a lesson. This is very serious, and you will regret it. I couldn't help but laugh. All right. I promise to be good. Thanks for calling. You've really made my evening. Can't wait for Friday. Sweet dreams. I ended the call, though I suspected the scammer had already hung up in anger. Taking a deep breath, I waited a moment to compose myself before stepping out of the office. Shelley was standing just outside, her face pale and tense. Who was that? She asked sharply. I resisted the urge to joke about Jake from State Farm, and instead opted for honesty. It was some scammer pretending to be the IRS, I explained. They were trying to get me to buy gift cards and give them the codes. Honestly, it's disgusting how they prey on people. Shelley gave me a suspicious glance as I walked past her into the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune. Back at the table, I saw her watching me with an expression of disdain. That didn't sound like a scam call, she muttered. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you were eavesdropping? What about that confidentiality you mentioned when I asked about your calls with your sister? We ate in silence for a while after that, but the tension was thick. Finally, Shelley set her fork down and said firmly, I don't want you to go out with your girlfriend this weekend. I looked up calmly, meeting her fiery gaze. And what do you suggest I do while you're out on your date? Stay home and knit? My tone hardened, and I leaned in slightly. Listen carefully. If you want to change what our marriage is, you need to understand something. I have options too. We're supposed to be equal partners. If you want to treat me like a fool and go behind my back, we might as well end this now. You can go find someone else willing to put up with it, but it won't be me. Shelley's face twisted in anger as she pushed back from the table. Why can't you be like Tony Sears? He lets Darcy have her fun. Maybe you should have married Tony Sears, I shot back. Without another word, Shelley stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door and locking it behind her. I sat at the table for a moment, staring at the remnants of our meal. The chicken and orange sauce suddenly tasted like nothing. Packing up the leftovers, I placed them in the fridge, my mind racing. For a brief moment, I considered kicking down the bedroom door and tearing the place apart, but I decided against it. Shelley needed time to stew, to process everything. I had made my position clear. Now it was up to her to decide where we stood. Sitting on the couch, I let my thoughts drift. This felt like a critical moment in our marriage, a crossroads with no easy answers. Part of me hoped my exaggerated reactions would help Shelley understand how deeply her actions had hurt me. But would she see it? I thought about Darcy's influence. Shelley had been fed a string of fantasies and bad advice, and now she was teetering on the edge. I'd been on the receiving end of flirtation myself. I wasn't a young Antonio Banderas, but I knew how easily it could turn someone's head. If she kept down this path, we were doomed. Taking action, I looked up divorce laws in our state. With no children and equal incomes, everything would likely be split 50-50. I filled out a petition, just in case, and even researched prenuptial agreements as a way to set new boundaries if we stayed together. Trust was already hanging by a thread, but one thing was clear. Our next conversation around the table would be a serious one. I was done being compliant and passive. Deep down, I believed Shelley hadn't yet done anything that would permanently destroy our marriage. Her declaration last night felt more like testing the waters than a full betrayal. Still, I couldn't reconcile with her if she had already crossed the line. I had been giving her space to think, idling around the house and biding my time. It was over an hour and a half before I finally heard the bedroom door creak open. Shelley's footsteps were soft as she made her way into the living room. Her demeanor was completely different, quieter, more hesitant. "Can I talk to you, Bryce?" Her voice was low, almost remorseful, nothing like the tone she used the night before. I turned toward her and motioned to the couch. "Sure. Sit here," I said, doing my best to sound open and calm. I patted the cushion beside me. Shelley sat down, her shoulders slumped. "Bryce, I realize I've been acting stupid." Those words hit me like a punch. Was this really the end of us? Had she already gone too far? I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing, as she continued. "I've been flirting with someone at work," she admitted. "We've had lunch a few times, and I told him I'd go out with him this weekend. Darcy, my friend, she encouraged me. She's been having affairs for years, even though she's married. Her husband knows and lets her do it. Darcy is always bragging about how much fun she has." Shelley hesitated, taking a shaky breath. "Darcy told me how to approach you, coached me on what to say. I planned that whole speech and even practiced responses to any arguments you might make. I wanted to do something selfish, and I am so sorry." I didn't move, letting her words sink in. Shelley's voice wavered. "I was shocked when you got so excited and immediately agreed. And then when I found out you had someone waiting to take my place, I was crushed. But how could I argue? You hurt me, Bryce." I went to bed angry, but I couldn't sleep. At some point in the night, I realized how cruel I had been to you. You were only showing me what I was doing to you. She managed a small, sheepish smile. "You actually hit me hard, emotionally. I still didn't say a word." Shelley pressed on, her voice trembling. "Today, I replayed everything in my mind. For a while, I convinced myself you were making it all up, until that phone call." Her gaze was searching, full of regret. "I realized we were on the edge of disaster." Her voice softened as she added, "Bryce, I feel like an absolute idiot. I married you for so many reasons, and every day, you live up to all of them. But I got caught up in someone complimenting me, flattering me. It felt like being back in school, being noticed in a way that made me feel special. And then you reminded me how special you are. I can't lose you. I don't want to." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "I canceled my weekend plans. I told him it was over, that I never wanted to see him again. I swear to you, Bryce, on everything sacred, I never crossed the line. I never cheated. But I know how it must seem because of what I said last night. How can I convince you to cancel your plans and come back to me? To us?" I finally exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Shelley's words had struck a chord, but a chasm had already formed between us. Shelley, I began, my voice sharp with emotion. How do I know you're not just saying this to get me to cancel my plans? How do I know you're not putting off seeing Jason or someone else later? When trust is broken, can it ever really be rebuilt? Her face fell as the weight of my words hit her. Wait, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How do you know his name? How did you find out? I didn't answer. Let her sit with that, I thought. After a moment, she shifted closer, reaching out to hug me. I'm sorry, she whispered. Can we just be ourselves for a while? At least until we figure this out? I don't want to think about it anymore tonight. I just want to be close to you. Shelley's voice cracked as she added, Please, Bryce, don't push me away. I leaned back, letting her nestle against me. We sat in silence, breathing in unison, but the distance between us was undeniable. The chasm of mistrust still loomed, and I couldn't see how we would ever bridge it. Later, when we went to bed, Shelley kissed me, her touches soft and pleading. But the gap between us remained. As the night wore on, I woke to the sound of Shelley crying quietly. Stupid, she muttered to herself. Why did I listen to Darcy? Her voice was tinged with anguish, regret, and self-loathing. The rest of the night passed slowly, steeped in tension and misery. By morning, we both left for work, agreeing that we would revisit the conversation that evening. There would be no wine, no beer, just the leftover Chinese food and clear heads for the hard discussion ahead. At home, I organized 2 folders. One labeled A contained a divorce petition, and the other labeled B outlined a prenuptial agreement. Both sat on the table, face down, waiting for Shelley to come home. When she walked in, her eyes flicked to the folders, then back to me. Taking a deep breath, I decided to let her speak first. She had created this mess. She could be the one to start fixing it. Bryce, Shelley began, her voice shaky, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for opening this door. I just want to close it and lock it forever. Can't we just forgive and forget? Go back to what we had. Her hopeful smile faltered when I replied, No. Shelley's face fell, her hope evaporating. I continued, my tone steady but firm. Over the past few weeks, you lied to me about calls from your sister, which were actually from a man you planned to cheat on me with. You admitted to flirting, to going out to lunch, and to making plans with someone else, all while keeping me in the dark. That is not acceptable behavior for someone who claims to love me. I see 2 options, I said, picking up the folders from the table. Option A, I handed her the first one, is an agreement that we both adhere to. It outlines behavior we both find acceptable. It's strict, but it's fair, and it's designed to rebuild trust. If we cannot agree on this, I paused, lifting the second folder, then we moved to option B, divorce. We split everything evenly and go our separate ways. Shelley gasped, her face turning pale. Divorce? She shrieked. No, Bryce, no. You cannot be serious. I cannot live without you. I am so sorry. I waited patiently for her to calm down. Shelley, I said softly but firmly, I do not want that either. But I am serious. If we cannot agree on a way to rebuild trust, there is no future for us. She whimpered, her voice shaky. What about you? I know you lied to me about that phone call yesterday. That wasn't a call from a scammer, she said, her eyes narrowing. You see, I replied, trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken. But we'll discuss that call after we decide about option A. Can we at least agree to put together a plan we can both follow? Shelley reluctantly took the agreement and began flipping through it, muttering under her breath. Wow, this is intense. Phones must always be on, with tracking apps active at all times so we know where the other person is. Texting your spouse whenever you leave work or go somewhere without them. Being ready for your spouse to show up unannounced. This is a short leash, Bryce. Really short. She sighed, setting the agreement down. I hate that it's come to this, but I understand. I am so sorry I hurt you and broke your trust. She hesitated. I basically agree to everything, but I think we should add a few positive things, like spending more time together, going on dates, and sharing more about our thoughts and dreams. I want us to grow stronger, not just survive. I smiled at her suggestion and nodded. Let's write that in. We updated the document together, signed it, and even added a somewhat cheeky addendum. We both agreed to make serious love regularly, to stay too tired or too in love to even consider anyone else. Shelley smirked as she leaned over, planting herself on my lap. She kissed me with an intensity full of hope and love. Tell me we are going to be okay, she whispered. Tell me you still want me to be your wife. Cupping her face, I replied, I still want you to be my wife. I think we are going to be okay. Good, she said with a playful grin. Now, about that phone call. I pulled out my phone and played her the recording. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head with a laugh. You sneaky devil, she said, lightly punching my shoulder. Remind me never to cross you again. Several months have passed since that pivotal Thursday. The agreement remains a reference point, though we rarely have to lean on it. The love clause, however, is one we follow religiously. Showing up unannounced to a lunch meeting here, or there, has earned me big hugs and introductions to Shelley's colleagues. We are spending more time together, communicating better, and rebuilding the foundation of our marriage. One evening, as we relaxed on the couch planning a long weekend getaway, Shelley's phone buzzed. She frowned as she saw the caller. Why is my boss calling this late? She muttered before answering. Hi, Betty. What a surprise. Is everything all right? Her tone shifted as she listened. You are kidding me. When did this happen? Her face turned pale as she continued to listen. Oh my gosh. Okay, I will contact my team immediately. I will see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the large conference room. Good night, Betty. Shelley set the phone down, her expression troubled. What happened? I asked. You look shaken. Shelley turned to me, her voice solemn. Tomorrow morning, the entire human resources team is meeting to review updates to the employee handbook. It's about the non-brotherhood policy. She took a deep breath. Darcy and Jason were caught in bed at her house by Tony. My eyebrows rose. Shelley pressed on. Apparently, Jason mocked Tony, called him names, and made fun of him. Tony snapped. He dragged Jason out of the house, completely naked, and beat him so badly Jason is now in the hospital. They think he will lose an eye. Darcy tried to intervene but got knocked down and lost several teeth. She is in the hospital too. And Tony? He is in jail. I stared at Shelley, and she quickly raised her hand. Don't say it. Don't say what you were thinking. I know exactly what it is. I was going to follow Darcy down that rabbit hole. I couldn't keep quiet. Darcy and Tony were playing a dangerous game. Tony probably kept quiet for years because he had more to lose. But I guess everyone has a breaking point. Shelley nodded and gently poked my chest. I told you not to comment, she said with a faint smile. I laughed but felt a twinge of sadness. 3 lives had been ruined because 2 people decided to push the boundaries too far. I am glad we are not in the same sinking boat, I said. Hopefully, we have both learned from their mistakes. Shelley leaned her head on my shoulder. Maybe one day, she said softly, we can live by the old rules again. For now, our game has changed. But together, we are rewriting the rules and making sure they work for us. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.
Bye bye.